It's time for the
All right, what's going on, my friends? Chad here. It's now 3 o'clock. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. Shedeur Sanders listed fourth on the Browns' quarterback depth chart, but he's going to get the start Friday night at Carolina. Kickoff will be at 4 on NFL Network. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have signed Teddy Bridgewater for depth, with Michael Pratt and Baker Mayfield dealing with nagging injuries. The Rams have signed running back Kyron Williams to a 3-year extension worth $33 million, and Vikings wideout Jordan Addison is going to miss the first 3 games of the year for violating the league's substance abuse policy. On the diamond, the Mariners will open up a series tonight against the White Sox at T-Mobile Park. That first pitch is at 6:40. Brian Wu will get the start for the Mariners. Seattle opens the day 3 games behind Houston in the AL West. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing is coming up next. The voice of your Trailblazers, Travis Demers, will join me at 3:20, fresh off his trip to New York, and we'll talk football with Justin Hopkins, Scoop Duck at 4:20.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men. Call 1-800-DIVORCE. Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Doing.
I'm assuming it's something great, so I appreciate it, but was a little shocked.
It was an unfortunate game for me. The Broncos lost Super Bowl 22 by a final of 42-10. Broncos and Redskins.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
Well, one guarantee in my life, anytime I say anything about the Denver Broncos and the Super Bowls that they lost with John Elway back in the 80s, Michael Shacker's always around to get the audio bite of that. He thinks it's funny. And it was nice to have Jack and Scooby Stanley in studio yesterday. Jack, of course, was a part of the Redskins team that won the Super Bowl in 87. Scooby, a decade with the Oakland Raiders as a Raiderette, if you can believe that. All right, excited about the show today. I am holding in my hand 4 different postcards, one from the Detroit Tigers, one that says home of the Cleveland Guardians, another one from PNC Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the last one is from Toronto. Miranda, my lifelong radio heckler, has been on a baseball tour. Take me out to the ball game, and she was diligent enough to send me postcards from each stadium. And I cannot wait to share these with you later in the show. I love the greeting on each of the postcards. All different, all very rude, and all very creative. So I'll get to that. Travis Demers, the voice of the Trailblazers, is going to join us in 20 minutes. I want to talk to Trav. He's coming off his trip to New York, had a chance to spend time with his pops and his mom, family. They went to a Yankee game. He took his dad to a game, and because of his connections, he knows a couple of guys, he was able to get his dad back to meet a couple of legends. So he'll share that story with us as well. Also, insight from Trav on the release of the NBA schedule, and I want to get his take on the New York Giants, going back to my conversation yesterday with Joe DeLeon, who was very complimentary of Abdul Carter, who has been turning heads in camp. He's been awesome. Now, at 4:20, one of my favorites, and someone you know very well, Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck. I want to talk to him about this roster. One about the continued efforts by Dan Lanning and his staff to recruit the heck out of the country and bring in talent to the program, which I think is critical, but also with a roster that's got a lot of turnover from last year to this year. How are they going to do with a number of starters gone on defense? I think 7 of them, the majority of starters gone on offense. Are they going to be able to retool the offensive line? What about the young receiving core? And then defensively, how do they sit up or situate? How are they situated before the season gets underway? Now, the Ducks' schedule, I think, lays out really nice for them from the standpoint that they're only going to be an underdog in one game, and that's going to be the Penn State game early in the year. Outside of that, they'll probably be favored in every game, and most people consider the game at Iowa to be kind of a toss-up. So we'll get his thoughts on the schedule, but more importantly, just the overall work with Dan Lanning and his staff now that he's got a few years under his belt, and we'll have a chance to really get a look at the talent. Plus, Dante Moore. My big question with Dante Moore is, how good can he be? How good will he be? I mean, that's really what I want to know. I know he's an incredible athlete and has got a ton of talent, but the Ducks are coming off 3 straight years of remarkable production at quarterback. Remarkable production with Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. So I'm anxious to see what he can do. Gabriel hit 73% of his passes for well over 3,800 yards and 30 touchdowns. Nix connected on 77% of his passes for over 4,500 yards and 45 touchdowns in 2023. So Moore's got a lot to live up to in terms of what they've got or what they've had at that quarterback position over the last few years, obviously. But the Ducks have the resources and the cachet to be able to go out and get whatever quarterback they want, but they elected to go with Moore. So that's got to tell you something about what they think about him and where he's at on that. I've also got a very odd story I want to share with you today on a phone conversation I had. I had never heard it phrased quite that way. I was getting an estimate, a quote. You know how you call a business, you're like, hey, I need some of these. Can you give me a quote? I mean, the guy was very efficient, and I didn't have to wait long on the phone before I got the email just popped right into my phone. But he said something that was bizarre, and it raised a red flag. And do you have things like that in your life where you don't really know how to explain it, but there's just certain things like if someone does something a certain way or says something in a certain way, it bothers you. It causes you to see red flags. So I was a little bit disturbed because I'd never heard that before. I was like, what? Oh, what did he just say? Like I started giggling because it was so funny. So I'll share that story with you as well. I do want to start out the show with football. Oh, by the way, you can always listen live and podcast the show via our free iHeartRadio app with 620 Rip City Radio. It's terrific for streaming. It's great for podcasting the show, catching up, and also running it through your Bluetooth. Love the app. Now, you can also check us out on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and pull up our homepage, Rip City Radio 620, and you'll be able to stream all of our live shows. You can see in studio if you would like, and then you can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. Telephone number to jump on board here is 503-248-0620. Also, I was very oddly productive this morning, and I had time before the show began to run over to the store to pick up a mother load of nutrition bars because I was getting low, and I'd love to have those on hand at all times. So as I was passing by one aisle, they had one of those end caps on one of the aisles where they have like little miniature bags of chips for 48 cents. And I liked the idea of spending 48 cents, and I found a bag of pop chips, 100 calories. And I grabbed it thinking it was just the plain Jane sea salted pop chips. Pop chips are a genius invention. So as I was driving back to the studio, I popped one in my mouth. I was like, well, that tastes a little bit different than what I was anticipating. And I looked at the bag and I was like, oh no, sea salt and vinegar. And I've never been a fan of salt and vinegar chips. I've always thought that's kind of gross. But I got to be honest with you. I ate one and I was like, well, I don't want to waste the 48 cents. So I popped another one in. And by about the third one, I was like, I think I like this combination. Never in my life until about, 20 minutes ago did I realize that, hey, I'm okay with that now. I may have to try some again. You ever had that experience where you thought you hated something or maybe you legitimately did hate something, but then you try it again at a later time and you find out that, hey, it's not so bad anymore. It's not what I thought it was. It's weird how we change with time, isn't it? All right, let's talk a little bit of football. A couple of different things going on. I can't wait to get to Bo Nix. I am fully aroused at the Denver Broncos right now, and it's because Sean Payton, their head coach, is leading the charge. Like he is the one who is in front on the hype train. It's very rare that you hear a head coach saying the things he's saying, but he is. And I'll get to that. But I want to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Now, a lot of news has come out. They released their depth chart, their quarterback depth chart. And the news there, Shedeur Sanders is fourth on the QB depth chart. Joe Flacco is number one. Kenny Pickett, number two. Dylan Gabriel, number three. And then Shedeur Sanders is fourth. Now, is it a surprise that Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett are 1-2? No, of course not. And that's because they've been in the NFL for a number of years. Joe Flacco is incredibly experienced. He's won a Super Bowl and at one time was one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Kenny Pickett, not as successful as Joe Flacco, not even close to it, but, he's been out there facing live bullets for a couple of years. So he knows what it's like to be under center. He knows what it's like to be a starting quarterback, and that experience gives you an advantage. Now, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders come in at 3 and 4. Now, I don't think they're going to carry all four of these players going into the season. That would surprise me. I still think Kenny Pickett is, ripe for the picking. If a team's looking to add a quarterback, especially as we get through camp in the preseason, if any injuries pop up. So that leaves you with Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. Now, I have been listening to a number of people, but the guy that's been all over this story from the get-go has been Albert Breer from the Monday Morning Quarterback. And if you read his stuff, if you listen to what he has to say, he's been following this story closely with Shedeur. And he's been talking about this now for weeks, that Shedeur, from the moment he arrived at the Browns facility, has just been behind the other quarterbacks in terms of getting up to speed, knowing the playbook, learning the offense, just understanding how to function as an NFL quarterback. And the theory there, or at least the idea, is that, the offense that he came out of at Colorado, where he was ad-libbing a lot, he was in the shotgun, he just didn't do a lot of things. And the concepts that they were running at Colorado, it didn't really prepare him for what he's facing now in Cleveland as a rookie quarterback in the NFL. It's not an indictment the way people want to believe it's an indictment, because a lot of people are rooting against Shedeur Sanders because he's Coach Prime's son, but this was to be expected. It's going to take him a little bit longer to get up to speed. Now, he's had some good moments at camp. He's also had times where he struggled as well. Now, Dylan Gabriel, he's played a lot more big-time football over the last several years with a ton of experience. And he's a little more polished in terms of just understanding the playbook, the offense, and what he needs to do. His biggest disadvantage is a lack of athleticism and being undersized, not being tall enough. And can he function? Can he be able to deliver the football on time, on target, over the middle of the field at his height? We'll wait and see. But here's the interesting twist. So Joe Flacco's the vet. They're not going to play him in the first preseason game. That wouldn't make sense. Kenny Pickett right now is banged up a little bit. So what they're going to do on Friday is they're going to start Shedeur Sanders. They're at Carolina. It's going to be on NFL Network. And here's the beauty of it. It's going to give Shedeur a chance to go out there and showcase what he can do. It's a big moment for him. He's a fifth-round pick. He's fourth on the depth chart, but it's still an open competition. And if he goes out and plays well and is effective in terms of delivering the football on time, on target, not taking ridiculous sacks and not turning it over, it's going to give him a chance to continue to press forward. It's a big opportunity for Shedeur. And I'm anxious to see what Dylan Gabriel can do, because I like him as an individual. I just know how difficult it is for guys of his size to be able to function in the NFL, in an NFL offense, especially when it comes to utilizing the middle of the field. So there you have it. Shedeur Sanders will get the start as the fourth-string quarterback on the depth chart in Friday's first preseason game for the Browns against Carolina. All right, when we come back, Travis Demers will join us. We'll get his take on Abdul Carter. When is that NBA schedule going to pop out? And what was it like getting a chance to meet Susan Waldman? That's up next on the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, that right there is the wonderful tones of Lee Demers, father of Travis Demers, who joins the show right now. And Trav, I love that you shared the song with me because I'm going to get what I'm going after. That's your favorite song that your dad wrote when you were young.
Yeah, it is. He wrote it the year I was born. He wrote it in 1981, and I remember being 5 or 6 years old and having that on cassette tape, and I loved it. And I didn't realize how much it was going to resonate with me throughout my life.
That's really cool. You know what's awesome? I think maybe when you grow up around somebody in their work and what they do, you grow accustomed to it a bit. But I'll tell you what, your dad writing music and piecing it together and composing, it's not easy work. So
Yeah.
to be able to do that, you have to have real talent. And it's cool now that you can step back and really be able to see that. And I know you've always known that, and you've got a bit of a
Sure.
musical ear yourself, but your dad's got talent, man. I love it.
He does, and he not only did he write that song and sing that song, but he was also playing every instrument on that recording too. So, he's always, that's what I've known from him my entire life. He's been a musician.
Is he still writing and playing today?
Yeah, he is. It's kind of complicated to explain, but he's working on something called Sync, which is like composing songs to be placed in like music libraries for like shows and commercials and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I love it that you and I have such similar life experience. The great Chuck Mangione, who is from Rochester, New York, and he was really the guy who started smooth jazz. He passed away, and the first person that texted me about it was you because you knew that I would care about that. And I also knew he was a big Yankee fan and from Rochester.
Yeah, I know. I know that he was always one of your guys. So as soon as I heard that, you were the first person I thought of.
All right, I've got to ask you, and I've got Tony in Boring who wants to know, but you had a chance to meet the legend, the one and only, Susan Waldman. What was that like, Trav?
I've been listening to Susan in some form or another since I was probably about 10 years old. When
Your
I
whole
discovered,
life.
Yeah, that's when I discovered sports talk radio was, the summer of '92 on WFAN in New York. And she was not, she didn't start with the Yankees, I think, until, 2004, somewhere like that. But she was a reporter, and she was covering baseball and covering the Yankees. And so I've known of her basically my entire life. And I listen to the Yankees almost every day. In some form or another, I'm either watching or listening to the Yankees. And a lot of times if I'm, cleaning up or doing something around the house, I have the Yankee game on. And obviously first it was, John Sterling and Susan. And then last year, when he was partially retired, it was Justin Shackle, and now it's Dave Sims. So it was really cool to meet her and, meet her in person. She does not look her age. She is 79 years old. She does not look 79 years old. And you never know about people. I've heard from people that have worked with her and have known her that she's very nice, and she was a really, really nice person.
All right, so give me this story. I know that you know one of the technicians. He's the guy that works with you on radio broadcasts when you're in town with the Nets and the Knicks. But what you were telling me is you're able to reach out to him, and so he was able to get some access kind of behind the scenes. So you took your dad to a Phillies and Yankees game, and he got to take part in seeing the same things you did, which is cool.
Yeah, so my dad has never been in a press box of any kind. He's never been behind the scenes anywhere in any capacity in sports. And so Matt Shortis, who is the Yankees radio engineer, he does the same job for the Yankees that Travis Clinton does with us for the Trailblazers. The difference is for the Yankees, he travels, which is a long season for him. But in the off season, he is engineering the visiting broadcasts for the Knicks and Mets games, and I've been paired up with him a number of times. But he was also an adjunct professor at my college, at the college radio station that I went to and worked at. So we knew some people, and I've known him now for a number of years, and we get along pretty well. And last year I had reached out to him when my dad and I went to a game, and he didn't respond. So when I saw him in Brooklyn last basketball season, he's like, yeah, next time just keep texting me until I respond because I'm an idiot and I forget. I do that all the time. I can relate. And so I text him, a week or so ahead of time. He got us some credentials. We didn't have to wait in a long line to get in. We already had tickets and parking and all that.
Oh, nice.
So he showed me around the press box. And my dad was really hoping to go into the Yankees TV booth because their analysts that work with Michael Kay are, it's David Cohn and Paul O'Neill or Joe Girardi. But because it was an Apple TV game, there was no local broadcast, which was unfortunate. Who was doing Cliff Floyd was doing the Apple game with Wayne Randazzo. But we saw them, but I didn't get to meet them. But he got to see where Paul Olden, who is the PA announcer, sits, and the organist, and go down to the video board room and just check out the whole press box. And he thought it was really, really cool.
That's great. We're talking with Travis Demers, voice of the Trailblazers. I'm glad you had a good time, and I'm excited that your parents are coming out next week because I'm going to get a chance to meet them face to face. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
The NBA schedule, you were telling me earlier it's going to come out real soon. What's the expected release date for that?
I don't know the exact date, but it usually, I think last year it was August 15th. Yeah. It's usually between August 12th, August 15th, somewhere in that ballpark. So I'm expecting it to come out, middle, end of next week.
All right, great. So we're going to get that soon, and we'll be able to see what's on tap for the Trailblazers. I'm excited about that. And in terms of the opener, we know we've got the preseason schedule, but sometime in that third week, maybe around the 22nd or 23rd, we can expect the season opener.
Yeah, the NBA season will open up on October 21st, and then the Blazers' first game will more than likely be on Wednesday the 22nd or Thursday the 23rd. Obviously, I don't know if that's going to be a home or away game, but it'll come out the 22nd or 23rd. The Blazers have been, most years that I have worked for the team, the opener has been at home. So, if you do the math on that, maybe it means we're on the road this year, but who knows? But I'm looking forward to it, man. I haven't worked regularly since April 13th, our last game, and I'm ready to go back to work.
You're jonesing, man.
I am. We had the draft show, and I'm doing my behind-the-scenes prep and everything like that, and getting all my templates and stuff ready for next year, which takes basically all summer to do. But I'm ready to go back to work.
Well, I wanted to ask you about one gentleman in particular, Drew Holiday, who was introduced to the media a little over a week ago, and I was just impressed with the way he conducted himself, but not a surprise because that's what he always does. But take a listen to him when he was asked about his fit on this team, Trav. I mean, he's the ultimate pro, Trav. I can't wait to see him get a chance to play in a Trailblazer uniform.
Yeah, he is a fantastic pro, like you said. He is a great human being. He is a great leader. He has won multiple championships, on different teams. He has had a number of different roles. He still plays elite defense. He is still a very good offensive player. Obviously, he's on the downslope of his career a little bit. But he absolutely fits in. And we've talked about this, Chad. We talked about it, during last season and the season before, that this team really needs veteran leadership on the floor. And what I hear from fans sometimes is that, well, they have Chauncey Billups. Why do they need, why can't he be their veteran? Well, that's not what he does. And you talk to any player, they will all tell you that hearing something from a teammate is very different than hearing it from a coach, even if it's the exact same message. And how many players have we heard talk about saying, man, when I was a young player, having this guy around me really changed my career. He taught me this, he taught me that. And there are so many things that Drew Holiday can do in that regard that he is the perfect fit. And they needed a veteran backup guard. Is he going to start? Is he going to come off the bench? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm assuming he comes off the bench. But he is exactly what they need. And I really can't imagine there being a better person in that role in the entire league than Drew Holiday.
I agree on that. We're talking with Travis Demers, voice of your Trailblazers here on the Rip City Drive. And were you surprised to see the Mariners actually get aggressive at the deadline and go out and make multiple moves, including getting Suarez back for this stretch run?
Yes and no. I mean, we've seen them make some moves in years past, but this year, being as close as they were to getting in, and right now, if the season ended today, they'd be in that final wild card spot, and they'd be matched up with the Astros in that wild card series. Their lineup is stacked now. They go get Naylor, they go get Suarez. They have a very good pitching staff. Obviously, Cal Raleigh is having a season for the ages, and what I think is underestimated about Cal Raleigh is you look at all of his metrics defensively, and he is as good of a defensive catcher and as good as a caller behind the plate to help his pitching staff as there is in all of baseball. There's a couple of guys that are in that category, like Austin Hedges is that good, but he's not. He doesn't have the same type of bat that Cal Raleigh does. Cal Raleigh does so much on both sides of the ball that, to me, he's the most valuable player in baseball this year because of that. And if the Mariners do continue this and they do get into the playoffs with that rotation and that bullpen, Munoz has been great this year. Wu has been great. They've had so many players this year that have really had career years that to go out and get a big right-handed power bat, something that they needed, it really puts them in a position to have success in a short series.
I agree with your assessment on Cal Raleigh. He's been amazing. And, we all thought Rodriguez would be the next star, but it looks like Cal Raleigh might be the franchise. But what's great about him, Trav, he changed the culture. It was, you remember 2 years ago, he called out the front office in frustration because they sat on their hands and did nothing. And and he knew they needed help to go out there and have a chance to compete. And then at the time, his manager told him he needed to pipe down and watch his remarks. And then look now, he's re-signed. They gave him the extension. They go out and make the moves at the deadline. And Cal's like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what we talked about before I signed my deal. That's great, man. He changed everything.
He did, and he's going to go hit 60 home runs.
Dude, I didn't know this, but he was second to Bonds, I think, with 38 homers going into the All-Star break. I think Bonds had 39, and he's got 38. Like, it's just a one little stat where you're like, gosh, man, he's having a big year.
Yeah. And you think about this, too. The most home runs in Major League history going into the month of August was 45, and I think that was Bonds. I think Bonds and McGuire each had 45. He had 42. I mean, that's right there.
And especially for a position you're so familiar with, like with the wear and tear, it's just amazing. But now with Suarez in there, you get more protection. Like, it's going to allow Raleigh to continue to be good. I love that. It's cool.
Yeah, it really is. And I want to see, like, for me growing up, I hated the Mariners as a kid, right? Even though I loved Ken Griffey Jr.,
yes,
but I hated the Mariners.
Well, for good reason.
And they were terrific. And then, in 2000, 2001, they go back-to-back ALCSs, lose to the Yankees both times, won 116 games in 01, but couldn't finish it off. I'm really rooting for them this year. I would love to see the Mariners in the World Series. They're the only team in baseball that's never been there. I want to see them play Milwaukee. Milwaukee is fascinating this year because, they have the best record in all of baseball, the Brewers. And they don't have a lot of great players on that team. The rookie pitcher, was it Mizorowski? He's been phenomenal. Hopefully he gets healthy soon. But I would love to see a Seattle Mariners against the original Seattle team, the Pilots, now the Brewers. That's what I want to see in the World Series if the Yankees don't get there, which they're not going to.
Dude, are they going to be able to stop their free fall?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, they went out and got 3 arms at the deadline for their bullpen, which was a total disaster. And the first game that they pitched, they blew a 6-0 lead. They had a 9-4 lead. And the bullpen that blew it was the 3 guys they went and got. They already demoted one of them to AAA.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I saw that. Not a good start for those guys. One last thing for you. I wanted to play this for you. I think I know what your reaction is going to be because of their quarterback situation. But I was talking with Joe DeLeon yesterday. And the reports coming out of Giants camp on Abdul Carter, I mean, this guy is turning some heads, and he's getting high praise for good reason. But here's what Joe had to say about Abdul Carter's performance thus far. Take a listen. That's pretty high praise coming from Carl Banks, man. Abdul Carter.
Yeah, it is. And look, the Giants need help everywhere. They are not a good football team. Russell Wilson's the quarterback. Cool. Is he going to stay healthy this year? Obviously, he had injury issues last year. You can still have Jameis Winston and Jackson Dart. Neighbors is great. The offensive line still isn't very good. The defense has a couple of really good players. I'm so fired up to see Carter play. There are just so many holes on that team, and I don't know what Daboll's future is. They're just. It's not fair to say they're directionless because they have drafted well, but they just haven't handled personnel well. And there's a reason why they've been one of, if not the worst teams in football since their last Super Bowl win, which was 14 years ago now. And I'm fortunate enough to have seen my team win 3 Super Bowls in my lifetime. I'm not old enough to remember Super Bowl 21. I know you are. Sorry, but I just want to see them not be terrible.
Ah, my goodness. Well, you're right. It's all about the quarterback. I mean, obviously, they got to get that figured out. But you're right. They have drafted well. But I just hate seeing guys like Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles and then turn out to be an MVP. It sucks.
I want to barf every time I see him in an Eagles jersey, man. It's sickening.
Well, Trav, great to catch up with you, buddy. I'm glad you had a great time in New York, and I look forward to next week.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, there you go. Travis Demers, voice of your Trailblazers here on the Rip City Drive. Love catching up with old Trav. And, his parents, I've talked to him on the phone and gotten a chance to know him, but I've never had a chance to meet him because they live over in New York, but they're going to be out in town next week. So finally, I'll be able to meet mom and dad. And there you have it. But Trav's right about Cal Raleigh. He's been freaking awesome this year. He's a culture changer. He is wildly productive, and because of the pressure he applied, he played a part in something that's critical. And that's, look at the Mariners now. I mean, they are a threat in the American League, big time. And I love Cal Raleigh. In fact, Softy is going to join the show tomorrow, and we'll get his insights on the Mariners and where they're at. Oh, this is a fitting song. The legend, Lonnie Anderson, passed away a couple of days ago. And so I was talking with my dad. He loved this television show, WKRP in Cincinnati. His favorite episode is the turkey drop on Thanksgiving, which I would imagine many of you could agree with that. Lonnie Anderson was the original blonde bombshell, and she was terrific on the show. All right, 503-248-0620. I'll tell you about an odd statement coming up next on the Rip City Drive. Yeah, this song here, I think this is Chicago 17. This song here and Hard Habit to Break are phenomenal. Chicago had gone through a bit of a dry spell, and that's when Peter Cetera connected with David Foster, the music mogul, and they pumped out Chicago 17, which produced some massive hits, including this song right here. I love Peter Cetera. He's got that weird singing delivery, and I think it's because he broke his jaw or had some type of issue with his jaw and had his mouth wired shut. And so he's got a weird delivery when he sings. And Shacker just likes to play songs that he thinks will coax me into trying to sing on the radio. I'm not doing it. I'm going to resist the temptation. All right, 503-248-0620. Tony in Portland says, Travis Demers on meeting Susan Waldman. Oh, my goodness gracious. Of all the dramatic things I have seen, I know what he wants me to do. That's pretty amazing. I heard, who's the guy from Happy Gilmore? Is it Chris McDonald? Is that his name? The guy that plays Shooter. He was talking about, that character. Like, he can't go anywhere. Like, if he's in an airport, someone will walk by and go, Shooter. And he just has to go with it, right? It's just part of their life now. So he'll show the guns, Shooter. It's amazing. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, if you see him, how can you not say, I would be back? You could say a variety of different things, but that's one of them. Like Susan Waldman, like if I was with Trav and his dad when they met her, I would ask her to say, oh, my goodness gracious. That's just how you know her. And she's awesome, but it's too much. Roger Clemens. Oh, I love it so much. All right, I got to share this story with you. Oh, by the way, I do have the 4 postcards from Miranda. You'll be amused, I think, at the 4 different greetings. All mean, but all creative and borderline inappropriate. But that's what we expect from Miranda. But she's been on a baseball tour. Detroit, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Toronto. I'll share those a little bit later in the show. The red flags. I mentioned this earlier. I don't know what it is, but there's certain things where if I hear something or somebody does something that's a bit odd, it can sometimes just pop up the red flags. Like, for instance, if I roll up on a guy, I'm like, hey, did you see the game last night? It could be like after, a championship game, the national championship, World Series, Super Bowl, whatever. If a guy's like, what game are you talking about? That's a red flag. Right away, it's like, what do you mean, what game? The Super Bowl? You didn't watch the Super Bowl, my friend? That would raise a red flag. There are certain things where I'm like, it seems a little bit fishy. So I'm calling around today. I needed to get a quote. It's about time to buy some tires. And I thought I would check around to see if they're all about the same price. Pretty much now, if you're going to go buy tires, it's like, well, there's another $1,000 out the pocket. Yeah, pretty much everything is expensive now. Tires, gas, oil changes, like pretty much anything you need done, it's another $1,000. Great. Just what I want to do is spend $1,000 on rubber. Well, anyways, I'm calling around getting a quote. And so I fire off this phone call to Firestone. And this guy answers. And he was really nice, like very helpful, very attentive. And what was great is it did not take long for him to get the information on the size of the tire I wanted and then email me a quote with all the details. The whole thing, the tires, the labor, road hazard, and then, of course, you've got to get an alignment if you're going to get new tires. And so I was asking him about the lifetime alignment. It's one of those deals where they offer lifetime alignment so you can spend $200 or spend $130. And it's like, well, the way you've priced it, I'll just get the lifetime alignment, whatever. Well, anyways, as he's getting my email address, and I give my email address is chad.doing@gmail.com. That's my personal email, and I've got work email like I'm sure most of you do, but for all of my personal stuff, I usually go with Gmail just because, the Google platform, it's very easy to use. I can send larger files. It irritates me. I work for a media company, and a lot of times I need to send like MP3 files or different video files or whatever, and it won't let me do it because it says the attached file is too large. It's like, dude, I work for a media company. What the flip are you talking about? That stuff drives me crazy. It's like I need to send a video, but I can't send the video. Anyways, Gmail is just easier sometimes. So they've got it on file because I've, had some work done at Firestone over the years. And he goes, is the correct email address chad.doing@gmail.com? And I was like, did he just say period? I've got to be honest with you. In my lifetime, ever since email became a thing and people separate their names by a little dot, I have never heard anyone say chad.doing@gmail.com. How bizarre is that? But the best part is he goes, is the correct email chad.doing@gmail.com? Well, why did you use the dot before the com when you use period between my first and last name? Why not just say, is the correct email chad.doing@gmail.com? I mean, I couldn't believe he did that. So that raised a red flag. Why would he say that? Why would he choose the word period instead of dot? It's a dot. I don't know. That just was something where I was like, it's a little bit fishy. But anyways, it was very helpful, and I got the quote, got the information I needed so I could move on with my day. And I appreciate that. But come on, man, period? So anyways, I'm a little bit suspect on that guy. But he was great. Don't get me wrong. Great guy, very helpful, very efficient. And it was not one of those hold deals where you get put on hold. Is there anything worse than calling a company and getting put on hold? Oh, by the way, I called the Polk County Courthouse. I mentioned I got a speeding ticket a couple of weeks ago in that safety corridor down there by Spirit Mountain Casino off Highway 18. I was guilty of sin. Guilty. No question about it. That was the police officer who was, frankly, one of the most beautiful police officers I have ever seen in my life. I certainly wasn't expecting that rolling up on the passenger window. I was, hi. Hello, officer. It was incredible. I've never seen an officer that spectacular and hot before. Very nice. But I knew I had no chance. Like, she was going to give me a ticket. But here's the interesting part. So I've been trying to pay the ticket because I'm guilty of sin. And I'm not going to make a trip down to Polk County just to sit in front of a judge and have him tell me I'm a moron. I'll just pay it and move on. I'm going to take the L, pay it, full price, whatever. I'm guilty. And I deserve the ticket because I chose to exceed the speed limit. But I've tried to pay it online, but she has not submitted the ticket through the proper channels yet. And I'm hoping that she does not, because if she does not submit it on time, I think I might get off on a technicality. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. If you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is chad.doing@gmail.com. Fire away with your emails right now. Telephone number here, 503-248-0620. We will focus in on the Oregon Ducks and the young talent that's going to be stepping in a big role this year, coming up at 4:20. I've got the postcards I want to read to you from Miranda. And Sean Payton is making me very happy right now. And the hype around the Broncos is immense. I'll tell you what that means. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, 4 o'clock. Chad here. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. Shador Sanders listed fourth on the Browns' depth chart, but he's going to get the start Friday night at Carolina in the Browns' first preseason game. Kickoff at 4 on NFL Network. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have signed Teddy Bridgewater for depth, with Michael Pratt and Baker Mayfield dealing with nagging injuries. The Rams have signed running back Kyron Williams to a 3-year extension worth $33 million. And Vikings wideout Jordan Addison is going to miss the first 3 games of the year. He violated the league's substance abuse policy. The Mariners open a series tonight at T-Mobile Park against the Chicago White Sox. That first pitch at 6:40. Brian Wu will get the start for the Mariners. Seattle opens the day 3 games behind Houston in the AL West. We're going to talk with Justin Hopkins, Scoop Duck, on the Rip City Drive coming up at 4:20. I love this song. It sounds like they're singing "I Like Fried Chicken." Give me some volume on this. Yeah, so back in the day when I got my first job at Red Robin, my very first job in the workforce was a dishwasher, or I think technically dish machine operator, DMO at Red Robin. Like, it was a hell job, no question about it, but I loved it. And I worked back there with my buddies, and I formed a great friendship with a gentleman named Aaron, and he and I would grind on Friday and Saturday night, there from like 5 p.m. until about 3 in the morning. After the late rush would come in, and the entire dish area was a mess, chaos. And then we had to clean all the dishes and then have that place, that whole area looking spotless before we left. I would leave there smelling like trash. Awful. But it was very rewarding at the same time. And that was one of the songs that would play on a regular basis on the Muzak that they had in the back part of the restaurant. And the music would help get us through the night. But there was one of the guys there, Pete, manager Pete. He would sing, "I like fried chicken." And I thought that's what they were singing until I realized it was alive and kicking. Anyways, it sounds like fried chicken. I like that. Telephone number 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck going to talk some college football with us coming up at 4:20. I want to get his take on, where the Ducks sit as they get ready for a brand new year and having to replace a number of guys on both sides of the football. Much easier to do when you recruit like Dan Lanning, but are some of these young guys, especially at receiver, ready to step in and get the job done? Now, Sean Hyken at Rose Garden Report, our Trailblazer insider, has put together a mailbag where he's answering various questions, and one came in about Jeremy Grant and what happens if he's still on the roster when the season begins. Here's what Sean Hyken had to write. So what happens if Grant is still here on opening night, which I expect him to be? It would be tough to justify either one of Denny Avdia or Tamani Kamara not starting. They were pretty decisively the Blazers' 2 best players last season, and I would agree with that. Kamara and Avdia from start to finish were the 2 best and great defenders. Hyken continues, and the backcourt will have its own decisions with Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, and Drew Holiday. Will Grant become a $32 million sixth man? Is he going to be okay with that? This is where Chauncey Billups will have to earn the extension he just signed and cash in on some of the goodwill he has with the players. The argument that Grant, because of his salary and tenure in the league, should automatically get a starting spot doesn't really hold up if the Blazers want to be seen as a serious team. The philosophy that Billups and Joe Cronin have preached since the day they took over has been go out and earn it. If Kamara and Avdia come out of training camp having done more than Grant to earn the starting roles, they have to start. And Grant has to be okay with it. Nobody should be promised anything on a team whose greatest success over the last 4 years is an unexpected 36-win season in a year where they were supposed to be tanking. It's a great line. Will Grant be thrilled if it goes this way? Probably not. But he's not the kind of personality that's going to rock the boat or make it a problem. And the best way for him to be better or to better his situation is to buy into whatever role he gets, rebuild his value, and make it easier for the Blazers to trade him to a situation where he may get to start more definitively. All right, there's Sean Hyken. Yeah, you can't start Jeremy Grant. You can't. And the reason why is he's not one of your two best options at forward. He's just not. He's not better than Avdia or Kamara. And I like Jeremy Grant. He's a cool dude. My guess would be because the Blazers made him a very rich man and took care of him with the extension that he'll roll with whatever they give him. Now, if Grant goes out and proves that he's the better option and he outperforms those two in camp, start Grant. But that's not going to happen because Avdia and Kamara they're young, they're hungry, and they're great two-way players. So it's a no-brainer in my mind. I do not believe that Drew Holiday is going to start. I think it should be Scoot and Shaden. And you bring Drew off the bench. And the reason why is because Drew's going to play a lot anyways. But I want Scoot out there on the floor starting and getting a chance to lead the team. My philosophy is simple. Scoot, Shaden. Those two guys need to hit. They need to develop. And if they do, this whole rebuild is going to go a lot easier because of those two guys. I'm not so concerned about Jeremy Grant. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson or Pat Riley to know that Avdia and Kamara are the best options at forward. Duh. Of course they are. And that's not a knock on Grant. It just goes to show you how great those two young guys are. Avdia does everything for them. Great facilitator, pushes the tempo. You need him on the floor. And Kamara is the best defender on the team. There you go. That's all you need. And they're better rebounders than Grant. Grant, the one thing he does bring to the table that this team needs is he's, over the last couple of years, been a productive three-point shooter. So there you go. That's my take on that situation. And it does look like he's going to be on the roster. I was hoping they'd be able to facilitate a trade, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Now, my man Sean and Sandy is defending Dylan Gabriel right now, which I respect. I know that there are a lot of people who are fans of Dylan Gabriel. I respect him and love him. I loved him in Oklahoma, and I knew when he came to Oregon he was going to be awesome with the Ducks, and he was. He put himself in Heisman consideration. And Sean says, hey, Dylan Gabriel is strong. Great legs, brother. And Dylan makes good decisions. He's proven he can play against top talent. There's no question. Dylan Gabriel was terrific in his college career. The issue with Gabriel is that he's undersized. And the problem is with shorter quarterbacks, it's harder for them to see the middle of the field. And in order to be a great offense in the NFL, you have to work the middle of the field and take advantage of those matchups. But smaller quarterbacks have an issue with that. And then it's not like Dylan Gabriel's Kyler Murray either, where Kyler Murray is a superior athlete with great speed and scrambling and movement ability. Like, he can really outrun guys. He's a terrific athlete with a ridiculous arm. Great arm talent, too. So he's able to get away with being undersized. Much like Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie was undersized, but he made it work because of an incredible awareness, quickness, and some of the best footwork you're going to see at the quarterback position. Gabriel just doesn't possess, those type of physical attributes. Now, he makes up for a lot of that with his, smarts. what's going on between the ears. But the reality is, like I mentioned with Albert Breer, he's been all over this from the get-go. When Shedeur showed up at camp, he was just behind the rest of the guys because the offense that he ran at Colorado and what he was asked to do at Colorado did not, prepare him aptly for the NFL. So he's, behind the curve a little bit, so he's going to have to continue to put in extra work. But a great opportunity on Friday getting the start against Carolina. He can go out there, and if he makes plays and he looks good and takes advantage of the opportunity, then he's still got a chance to put himself right there in the mix. It's an open competition. And the reality is that, one, the owner, I believe, Mr. Haslam, is the one who wanted Shedeur. So they're not going to cut him. Like, that's not happening because the owner wants him there. But also, look at the other quarterbacks. Don't tell me that, yes, Shedeur's fourth on the depth chart right now, but if you're looking up at the depth chart and you see Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel, is it really fourth? Or you're looking at it like, dude, all I've got to do is work my ass off and continue to make progress, and I'm going to find an opportunity because of the guys who are in front of me. Joe Flacco's old, so he's not going to be around much longer. Injuries are always something to keep an eye on. Kenny Pickett has not been good thus far in his NFL career. And Dylan Gabriel, like Shedeur, is a rookie and has to overcome the size issues like I just mentioned. But I'm fascinated by all of it. All of it. Now, I want to play something for you because we have our man Justin Hopkins coming up from Scoop Duck. And I want to play a couple different things for you. But I had a chance to catch up with Phil Steele, who puts out his preview magazine. The guy's awesome. And I asked him about the progress. Now, keep in mind, the talent is critical. Like, the Ducks have to replace a lot of guys on both sides of the football, but when you're recruiting like Dan Lanning, it makes it much easier. And I asked Phil what he's noticed because he talks to the coaches each year, through the few years that Lanning has been there. What has he seen in the work that he's doing with he and his staff? Yeah, talent. Talent accumulation. That's what it's all about. I asked Phil what the biggest challenge would be for the Ducks this year. Is it moving to a new quarterback in Dante Moore coming off of Dylan Gabriel? Is it the multiple starters, 7 of them on defense? What is it? All right. When we come back, Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck, one of my favorites. We'll talk with him and get his thoughts on Oregon. And then after that, I'll get to the 4 postcards from Miranda. 503-248-0620. I appreciate your time. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, check out Scoop Duck. You can go there right now and sign up for the best duck information. And it's only $1 for the first week. And joining us right now is the man behind it, Justin Hopkins, who is awesome. Justin, it's great to have you back on the show. I've seen a lot of the pictures you put out on social media. It looks like you and the family have been enjoying the summertime. I love it.
Yeah, it's summertime, right? Got to get out and enjoy, obviously, beautiful Oregon and beyond. Been to Boise, been to Mexico, going to Vegas here later this week. List goes on and on. But, yeah, I mean, that get the kids out, get the boat out, jump in the water, do all those good things, maybe hammer a couple beers along the way.
I love it, man. Football season's not far away. I wanted to ask you, not just with the Ducks who are transitioning a bit this year, having to replace a lot of starters who have moved on, but whether it's Dan Lanning or it's other programs around the country, what are coaches doing now that the portal is such an active part of the game in order to get guys up to speed in a very short period of time so they can make a contribution?
Yeah, I mean that's the name of the game, and I think if you look at Oregon, obviously, specifically, they went and got 3 offensive linemen in the portal this year that are, we'll just call them projectable starters for this season. And, that's a position that we both know relies on chemistry. So, yeah, the key is getting those guys around each other, getting them as many reps together as possible. If it's a guy that's not an offensive lineman per se, quarterbacks, getting them in the film room, learning the playbook, getting the lingo down, all those things. It's just an accelerated thing. You obviously want to minimize mistakes and get those guys up to speed, but at the end of the day, most of these guys are transferring, to Oregon or other big programs because they're really good football players. So at the end of the day, that athleticism still can mask a lot of mistakes of things they might not know to start the season.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned the offensive line. I'll ask you about the tackles. Isaiah World's coming in from Nevada. He was one of the top guys in the portal. And then they went out and grabbed Alex Harkey from Texas State. What do you think about those two guys in terms of what they're going to be able to bring to the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that, Dan Lanning has identified when there's maybe areas that need a little bit more juice at them, when it comes to Oregon, and it looked like tackle was where he considered that. I think Isaiah World is a guy that comes in with a ton of upside. He's got an NFL-ready body, all of those things, but there's a lot of, some of the nuances of playing left tackle that he still kind of needs to learn and perfect. So I'm saying that there's a really good football player that does need to figure some things out. Could potentially be a first-round guy, but he's not a first-round guy today, in my opinion, but he's got a whole season to iron that out. And we've seen that Alik Terry and Dan Lanning have done a really good job developing their offensive linemen. As for Harkey, I think that's a guy that comes with maybe just a bit more polish, a very natural right tackle, obviously highly experienced after playing at North Texas the last couple of seasons. So that's a guy that I think, really kind of steadies the ship. Oregon fans are going to be incredibly spoiled because the last couple of seasons you've got to watch Josh Connerly and Ajani Cornelius, and both those guys got drafted in the NFL. And I don't care if they're first-rounders or seventh-rounders. That means they're good football players. So, for them, I think Oregon fans are a bit spoiled. But I do recall this, and I don't know if you do. Offensive line last year struggled coming out of the gates. It wasn't all that good in the first 2 or 3 games. Obviously, Oregon was able to win those games, but it was a weak point and something that fans and media were talking about. So although there's a lot of new faces, it might be a weak point this year. But if they can kind of get things cleaned up over the 2, 3, 4 games to start the season, we could see a different unit finishing the season than what starts the season.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. I remember you and I talking about this last year after the slow start with the offensive line. And what was great was to see Lanning and his staff, how they coached those guys up. And by mid-season on, those guys were, sharp in pass blocking. The run blocking was better. Not perfect at all times, but, man, they were a much more formidable group by the end of the year. It was a great job by the coaching staff, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, that's the game within the game, right? And as coaches, you've got to go back after any game, whether you won 37-6 or you won, 24-21. You've got to go back and look at, hey, where did we fail? Where do we need to get better? What do we need to fix? And it was pretty apparent that Dan Lanning over those few games moved some guys around a little bit, tried some different things. and ultimately found a combination that works. And that, I call that humility. Maybe humility is not the right word, but that kind of humility where those coaches can go back and say, hey, look, we're not good enough here. We need to figure out this room, this group, this position, whatever the case might be, and get it better, because that's ultimately how you win a national championship is obviously making, elevating the entire floor of the team and fixing those shortcomings.
All right, Justin, as you know, Tez Johnson's now with Tampa Bay. Trayshawn Holden's in Dallas. Evan Stewart's got the knee injury, so he's out. I've talked to a couple of different, people who cover the game, and they're curious about the receiver position and how the young guys are able to step up. So what can you tell us about that group, whether it's Gary Bryant Jr. or Jeremiah McClellan? The young guys are going to have to step up and make plays.
Yeah, it's a really interesting group, and probably one that I think we will see a lot of different guys out there and a lot of different groupings. And I think, as I just talked about offensive line last year, and they moved guys around and tried different combinations, I could see a world where Dan Lanning's doing that for the first 2 or 3 games and just trying to find, you need a sure-handed Tez Johnson type of guy that can, find the underneath coverage and find a soft spot and get you those, 6, 7, 8 yards, whatever the case might be. You need that over-the-top guy that takes the top off the defense and stretches the field vertically. You need to find that combination of those 2 or 3 guys that'll work. And you mentioned a couple. Jeremiah McClellan seems like a guy, who could be in line to step up after a redshirt freshman season. Gary Bryant Jr. was injured much of last year, so we really didn't get to see him all that much. And his leadership's heavily talked about so far this offseason, so you've got to wonder if he's in a bigger role. Of course, I will mention 5-star receiver DeCorian Moore, who did sign with this class, has yet to take a real snap in a real game at the college level, but folks are drooling over what he brings to the table. So I think there's guys in there. I think, if Oregon didn't feel good about what it had, they would have gone to the transfer portal. They did bring in only one wide receiver transfer very early on in Malik Benson, way ahead of the Evan Stewart injury news. So, if that's a guy that can kind of come in with his experience from FSU and make a difference, I think there's 4 or 5, easily capable guys. It's just going to be, hey, who's going to rise to the top and who wants it more, and that's what it's going to come down to.
We're talking with Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck here on the Rip City Drive. Now, I know that Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel were sensational college quarterbacks, but what do you think about Will Stein getting a chance to work with Dante Moore, who is a much different type of athlete than those two guys?
Yeah, this one feels kind of different, right? I mean, I think you look at Bo Nix, and he obviously, of course, came in under Kenny Dillingham, but you look at Bo Nix, and when he was able to do it at Oregon, he was developed and continued to, build his career. But you look at Dylan Gabriel, and he's a little bit more of a ready-made guy, right? You kind of knew what you were getting coming in, and that's not to discredit Will Stein from doing what he does, but I feel like this is kind of a chance now for Will Stein to maybe get a little bit more credit, assuming that it's due, by developing Dante Moore, who's now, will have spent multiple years at the program. I understand he was a transfer, but it's now his second year he's been at Oregon, so a little bit of development there. Or potentially if Austin Novosad's the guy that earns the starting spot, signed with Oregon, as a freshman, has been at the program for a couple years. Whoever it is, whether it's one of those two guys, assuming it's one of those two guys, and I feel safe saying that, I think that's going to put another feather in the cap for Will Stein, just kind of acknowledging that maybe he's done a good job developing the quarterbacks on the roster versus, kind of the plug and play with a ready-made guy. There's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, your job is to win football games. And if it's, that type of quarterback, that's the right call. And if it's, getting one of these guys and developing them, that's the right call too. But I think this will be a great chance for Will Stein to kind of flex his muscle in that area.
Now, Justin, on defense, they've got, multiple starters to replace. I wanted to ask you about a couple of the defensive linemen. I think the Ducks finished like 15th in the nation last year in defense. I think they got a chance to be better this year potentially. But what are your thoughts on, the two tackles? They got Amari Washington, who is a very large man at 6'3", 320. And then you got Bear Alexander coming in from USC. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, those two guys, I mean, I don't know if you saw it. I think some did, but Bruce Feldman did his annual Freaks list, which is just, basically going around the country and finding guys that are just elite athletes, like just unreal measurables. And Amari Washington made the list. He made the list because at the measurements you provided there, 6'3", 330, 340 pounds, he almost runs 21 miles per hour clocked on the team and has a 40-inch or 38-inch vertical, whatever it is. It's really high. It's really good for a guy that big. So pretty excited to see what he can do because there's not many defensive tackles that are posting numbers even remotely close to that. So you're going to see some explosiveness there and a lot of athleticism. Barry Alexander, the USC transfer, 5-star coming out of high school, went to Georgia, went to USC, now basically ends his journey at Oregon. Just real interesting. I mean, if you were drawing up a young man and said, "Hey, I'm on Madden and I'm putting together a guy that I want to be, my prototypical defensive tackle," you would draw him. He's got the measurables, he's got the physique, almost all the things that you want. He just hasn't quite put it all together on the field. So what kind of is cool there is that's a guy that basically comes in with very low NFL potential at the moment, but could potentially be a first rounder by the end of the year because he's that type of an athlete. So, of course, you say that, and there's a ton of work between now and then, but it's totally feasible with him. So I'm with you. I'm excited about the defense. I think too deep. This is a much better defense than we saw a year ago across the board.
Yeah.
A lot of new faces have to come together, of course. I think the too deep up front, like we were just talking about on the defensive line, is far better than what we saw last year, far more experienced. So if Duck fans are hoping for a good defensive performance, I think there's a really good shot they're going to get that this year.
One of the guys I wanted to ask you about, I don't watch a lot of Purdue football because I don't want to torture myself, but one of the guys they've got coming in is, I think it's Dylan Thieneman, who's coming in from Purdue. He had a couple of monster seasons there. What have you seen from him on tape, and what's your take on him and how he's going to fit in with Oregon?
Yeah, Oregon's been blessed in the past with some truly elite safety play, and I think that this is the next one, right? This is the guy. I mean, we know about Javon Holland playing at Oregon a few years back and just what he was able to do and how special he was. This is a guy that kind of fits that mold. Super athlete, rangy, not afraid to come up and lay the hit stick down if he needs to. Incredibly cerebral. And, of course, I don't know this, but hearing from all the coaches and his peers, everybody talks about this is a first guy into the room every day and the last guy to leave. So, you put all those traits together, was a true freshman All-American coming out, earned all kinds of accolades in the Big Ten with Purdue, which was on a terrible defense. So I think a player of this caliber and putting other elite level athletes around him is really going to give him an opportunity to shine. And I think, one of the drawbacks has been, I think Oregon's safety play the last couple of years has been serviceable, but hasn't been elite. And so I think we're seeing a chance for that room to be elevated and the play there to be a little bit less of a liability, hopefully.
All right, I've got one more question, and I don't know if you know the answer to it, but I think last year the Ducks, they averaged about 4.4 yards a rush, which is, probably under the number, a bit pedestrian for them in terms of our expectations for how that offense should function. Was that more a product of the struggles early in the season with the offensive line, or was it not really having the bell cow type running back? Like, what do you think it was a result in the more paltry numbers in the rush game for Oregon?
Yeah, I think, and of course I'm not in the rooms, but I think a lot of that was a calculated risk from opposing teams that said, hey, look, we want to limit the run game from Oregon and try to make Dylan Gabriel beat us, with his arm, with his legs. And I wouldn't say that's a bad play because it's not a knock on Dylan Gabriel, but, of course, if a team can get rolling and running the football against you, it really makes your job tough as a defense to try and stop them. So, just kind of going back, if you look at a lot of tapes, there's a lot of teams that really tried to stack the box, kept their safeties low to the line of scrimmage. I think that was a byproduct of that. I do think overall, if we're just kind of addressing the offensive line, it wasn't necessarily an especially good run blocking group, a little bit better of a pass blocking group. I'm sure Dan Lanning recognized that. Will Stein recognized that and obviously made adjustments for that. So I think you've kind of got those two things. I think the running back play was fine for last year, but I think it's going to be elevated this year. And if these guys up front can gel and maybe run block just a touch better, I think we'll see that number come up because they're 3-4 deep at running back. So it's just a matter of those holes being there for them.
All right. The best information on the Ducks, you got to go to scoopduck.com and sign up now. You Oregon Duck fans won't be disappointed. You get that first week for $1. Justin Hopkins is here. He's from Scoop Duck. Justin, I love talking ball with you, my friend. Enjoy the rest of the summer with the family, and we'll talk again soon. And the games, we're just a few weeks away. It's awesome.
Yes, sir. Best time of year, right? Just kind of like Christmas Eve for a couple of weeks, and off we go.
I love it.
So, but yeah, thanks for having me on, brother. I love doing it anytime.
You're the man. There he is, Justin Hopkins. Love that guy. ScoopDuck.com. go there and take care of yourself, Duck fans, and get the best information available. Yeah, Justin's a good dude. Yeah, Oregon's going to be fine. And again, they're deeper this year. And again, that's a product of Dan Lanning and the resources that Oregon has and the recruiting and the work and Dan Lanning's, the way he and his staff have embraced technology and their relentless energy to target guys, to hit the portal, to recruit. They're doing a heck of a job, but also credit to Oregon's innovation. I spoke with a lady recently who was looking for a couple of Oregon State athletes to be able to pitch some products, right? So she was trying to get them some NIL dollars to be able to pitch. And, you know, the way they have it set up, it's a little more convoluted. Well, at Oregon, she went right to the website, picked out the athletes, and then boom, boom, boom. It was just quick hit on the web, and then you're set up. Like the way they've got everything set up for their athletes, the whole operation, it's exactly what you'd expect from Oregon. It's top notch. And Dan Lanning is doing a heck of a job of bringing that talent in. So I guess the big question is, how are some of these guys going to fit and gel right away? On the offensive line, they got some good guys who have come in, but, you know, offensive line, it's all about continuity. And the teams that bring back the majority of starters on the offensive line usually have an easier time of it because of that continuity. You have to have all five guys working as one. That's the key. But the Ducks are in a great position right now. And I'm excited about a couple of those transfers that came in. Isaiah World out of Nevada and Alex Harkey from Texas State. Those two guys will man the tackle positions. Their center position is set, and they got a couple of players that are guards. So if those guys can get off to a good start, they're going to need that too because they got an early season trip to Penn State. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll come back, and Miranda has chimed in via the postcard, so I'll share the 4 different stops on our baseball tour with you and the 4 different greetings at the top of every postcard. Pretty wild. All right, 503-248-0620. I'm still going to get to Sean Payton. He's pumping me up. The Broncos are going to be really good, and I'm excited to say that. You got the Rip City Drive. Yeah, this is some vintage Janet Jackson right here. It reminds me of my Uncle Truman. He loved Janet Jackson and Gloria Estefan. And I would go and visit my Uncle Truman and hang out with my cousin Kimberly and Becky. And it would take us to this place called Nickels and Dimes. It was like a sweet arcade in Durant, Oklahoma. I think I told you they had Durant Western days. I participated in the watermelon seed spitting contest, and I think I won. I can't remember the exact distance, but I won that competition and got like a ribbon. But they had a parade, and Dennis Rodman was in the parade. He would hang out down there in Durant all the time because that's where he went to school at Southeast Oklahoma State. And once he became a big star in the NBA, he would hang out on Lake Texoma in his, I wouldn't call it a yacht, but a nice big boat because he always bumping loud music and stuff. But Nickels and Dimes was great. Uncle Truman's awesome. Big football fan, cool guy. And he still lives down there in Durant. 503-248-0620. You know, Shacker and I were just talking. The rumor is that Howard Stern is going to retire. And we were talking about some of the ridiculous bits. He's done some wild stuff on the radio. But he had this, he would do this bit called The Dating Game. That's what Shacker and I think it was called, Dating Game. I can't remember the exact name. But we think it would be fun to do a dating game, a Rip City Drive edition. And we were trying to think of the two most unlikely guys to have success with the opposite sex. And of the guys that have worked here over the years that I've been here at 620, it would be Brendan Slaughter, single, and Kyle Nishida, single. And I just hooked up with Nishida at the We Play Open, the golf tournament. Love Kyle. And Brendan is cool, too. They're both cool. But it would be great if we could find some absolute, smoke show and then get them set up with like a first date because I would like the girl to come back in and talk about it. Like that would be fun. And Shacker and I can't decide who would have less success, Nishida or Brendan. But that would be fun to find out.
I said they would have success if they find someone who likes sports.
Yes, especially Kyle because he can talk sports all day. But I would make sure that neither one of the ladies that we brought in were sports fans. I would make them the opposite of sports fans because I would want to see them gripping and trying to make conversation. I give Kyle the slight edge over Brendan. I don't know. We should maybe do that. Well, if he is truly going to retire, I'll try and set it up where we're going to have a dating game with Kyle Nishida and Brendan Slaughter. And think about it, you all work with people like that where you're like, yeah, I think that person's going to be single most of their life. We've all seen it. But who knows? Outside of the workplace, they might be, smooth operator possibly. All right, Miranda has chimed back in. I told you, I get stuff in the mail from her. She'll send me text messages to let me know I suck at my job because I'm not talking about the things she wants me to talk about. But she does send me postcards from her travels, and I've gotten them from all around the world. And I got 4 in the mail over the last week. And she's on a baseball tour. I got one from Detroit, one from Cleveland, PNC Park in Pittsburgh, which is an absolute spot I want to hit because it's a beautiful park, and Toronto. And I want to read these to you because it gives you maybe a glimpse into Miranda's mind and how she likes to torment me. And just listen to the greetings for each card. Dear Feces. And this is the first one. It comes from Toronto. Dear Feces, take me out to the ball game. Getting ready to see the Yankees play the Blue Jays. I've heard that Aaron Judge guy is pretty good at baseball. If you ever choose to talk about baseball, perhaps you could discuss on the show. Please have an aneurysm. Miranda, number 1 of 5. That's from Toronto. Well, the next day I got another postcard in the mail. This one from Pittsburgh, with a picture of PNC Park. So we go from Dear Feces to Dear Steaming Pile. Good afternoon, Mr. Doing. Take me out to the ball game. Pretty sure that vindictive rat bastards get the pitching schedules in the MLB. We missed Scooball by 1 day in Detroit, and we missed Skeens by 1 day in Pittsburgh. Good thing I'm not bitter about it, huh? By the way, the above is a reference to baseball. Perhaps you could discuss that sport on your show, Miranda. The weird part is she didn't say a PS and ask me to die in one particular way. The third postcard came in from Cleveland, home of the Guardians. Beautiful picture on a sunny day from the ballpark. Here's the next greeting. I don't even know if I can say this. Dear Butt Plug, I said it faster because it was uncomfortable. Good afternoon, Mr. Doing. Take me out to the ball game. The July Great Lakes Humidity Tour concludes here in Cleveland. Oh, my bad. You're probably not aware. The Cleveland Guardians play a game called baseball. Check it out sometime. Cheerio, Miranda. And then finally, I got one from Detroit. Dear Renob. That word has made me laugh for about 30 years, and it continues to get the job done. Dear Renob. Okay, I'll see if I can get through this. Dear Renob, good afternoon, Mr. Doing. Take me out to the ball game. First place Blue Jays against the first place but slumping Tigers. Left after 7 innings with the Jays up 9-1. Felt like a Dodger fan doing that. If you're more confused than your usual foggy self, it's because the 2 sentences above refer to a sport called baseball. Check it out sometime. Miranda. There you go. Very nice of her to send me postcards from Toronto, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Detroit. I would say, and Miranda, I'm glad you had a good time. I know people have done this. You've probably seen it before too, but I've got people I've talked to that are on a mission to visit every ballpark in the country. And they even make these little, I don't know, these little tags or keychains or something that you can get every time you visit a park. I've been to several, but I would say Pittsburgh, PNC Park is right at the top of the list in terms of places I'd like to visit. And Dodger Stadium's nice because it's a beautiful park and it's a quick flight away. Colorado's beautiful. New York's nice. Maybe a Dodgers Pirates series in Pittsburgh would be nice to go check out. All right, telephone number 503-248-0620. And like Miranda, you can refer to me however you want. I don't care. Steaming pile, feces, renob, whatever works. Miranda, you're too much. All right, 503-248-0620. When we come back, Sean Payton's got a unique way to evaluate quarterbacks, and he really loves Bo Nix. And he thinks the Broncos are Super Bowl contenders. We'll discuss that next on the Rip City Drive. All right, the Seattle Mariners will open up a set against the White Sox tonight at T-Mobile Park. Brian Wu will get the start for the Mariners. First pitch at 6:40. Seattle 3 games behind the Houston Astros in the AL West. From the NFL, Shedeur Sanders is going to get the start coming up on Friday against Carolina. Kickoff at 4. It's on NFL Network. Sanders was 4th on the depth chart. The Browns released at quarterback behind Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. The Buccaneers have signed Teddy Bridgewater for depth behind Michael Pratt and Baker Mayfield. The Rams have signed running back Kyron Williams to a 3-year extension worth $33 million. And Jordan Addison of the Vikes, he's going to miss the first 3 games of the year for violating the league's substance abuse policy. Got more of the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing coming at you right now. All right, definitely got to talk about the Broncos and Sean Payton. I'm starting to get real excited at the vibes coming out of Broncos camp. Some reaction. My buddy Josh just reached out, and this is in reference to Miranda's postcards that I received in the mail. Josh says, "You laughing on the radio at Renob is incredible. One of the most joyous things I've heard in a while. Thank you." You're welcome. I'm just glad that someone referring to me as Renob can bring you great joy. And Scotty Bethune has chimed in. I ran into him on the golf course the other day. The best part about that encounter on Friday was we actually met on the putting green. He was getting ready to start off his round. I had just finished up 9 and was crossing over to hole number 10, and we met on the putting green. The last time we ran into each other, I was waiting to get into the restroom. He was coming out. And that's a little bit too personal for me. Scotty says, Renob is such an underappreciated term of endearment. I couldn't agree more. All right, let's talk about Sean Payton for a moment. The hype around the Broncos is real. And why shouldn't it be? They have a second-year quarterback in Bo Nix who's coming off a sensational rookie season. All 5 starters are back on an offensive line that was one of the best in the NFL last year. And their defense is led by Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain Jr., and they added to the defense, including Drake Greenlaw, linebacker, and Jahade Barron out of Texas. Like, they are loaded up on both sides of the ball. Better at the skill positions, better at running back with the draft pick of R.J. Harvey from UCF, and Bo Nix is awesome. He was terrific in year 1. Didn't get sacked, protected the football, and as the season went along from like week 4 on, he was, really making good decisions. I was blown away. I did not expect Bo Nix to be everything he was. And for a guy that doesn't have a strong arm, according to the experts, had the longest throw in the NFL for air yards with 67 of them. So his arm is much stronger than people think. He's much quicker and athletic than people think. And, of course, he's got the smarts and the processing ability to run an NFL offense. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do coming into year number 2. Now, Sean Payton has got a unique way to assess quarterbacks. And he was talking with Albert Breer, Monday Morning Quarterback, and the point he made about quarterbacks is he's got an analytics guy. And he asked him to go back and look at the last 30 years of quarterbacks, guys from college going into the NFL. And they found a number that translates almost perfectly. Quarterbacks who get sacked a lot in college get sacked a lot in the NFL. So keep an eye on Caleb Williams. Meaning, Sean Payton believes that sacks are on the quarterback, not the offensive line. That's just the way it is. That's why Russell Wilson drove him crazy. Quarterbacks that don't make quick decisions, don't get rid of the football, hold on to it, and get sacked, that's on them. And a lot of people point to the offensive line like, oh, they need to do a better job of blocking. Well, the good quarterbacks, what do Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, what did they do when they had a revolving door at left tackle? Or they had injuries up front and had inexperience in the offensive line? Well, their sack numbers never grew significantly. Why? They just got rid of the football quicker. That's what Tom Brady did. No problem. We have protection issues. We got young guys up front, injuries. I'll just get rid of the football quicker than before. So Sean Payton truly believes that the sacks, you point the finger at the quarterback because they're the ones not getting rid of the football, not making quick decisions, and causing the offense to bog down. Well, they went through the quarterbacks in the draft last year. You want to take a guess at who the top 2 quarterbacks coming out of college were in terms of, sack percentage, meaning sacks taken that were on them? The 2 best at it were Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams, of course, being the worst. Well, this is what Sean Payton said about Bo Nix. And this is just ridiculous praise. It's pretty awesome. Quote, and this is what he told Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports. He is going to be one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league the next 2 years. That's what we're seeing right now. He doesn't take sacks. He's got exceptional arm strength. He threw the longest ball, 67 air yards against Cincinnati. He can run. He can throw in funny body angles. It's pretty much everything you want in a quarterback right there. And on top of that, Sean Payton was talking to the media, and he was saying, look, in my time as a head coach, I've had 6 teams that I thought could win a Super Bowl. This year with Denver is the 7th team I've had that I believe can do that. Take a listen to what he had to say.
There's certain things that if they're not on point, it's hard to make a statement like that. But when you look at some of these critical factors, and look, I told them that, and now that doesn't mean, that just means you have a chance, and then I would say most importantly, ownership, because there's 20 that each year have hope and dreams, and they're dysfunctional at the top.
Wow. That's Sean Payton. Now, Sean Payton, of course, is one of the great offensive minds of his generation. He's a very good leader. It didn't take him long to set the culture and build a program there in Denver. And they're doing it they're still in the 2nd year of that major cap hit they took on Russ when they let him go. So next year, they're going to have more resources to continue to pour into the team and construct what they're looking for while Bo Nix is still on a rookie deal. Sean Payton is arrogant. He drives me crazy sometimes because he's very sure of himself. He talks a lot, but he would not say this if he did not truly believe that this team has a chance to compete. And I was wrong about Bo Nix. I liked him a lot. Character guy, smart, did a heck of a job at Oregon in 2 years. He had to battle through a lot during his time in college, during his time at Auburn, making the transition to Oregon. And the majority of experts that, Dwight and I spoke to at the time when Bo Nix came to Oregon, no one was excited about it. They thought he was a bust. And he turns out to be a stud. So all the experience, all the highs and the lows, and then he gets paired up with Sean Payton. And I guess what surprises me about Bo is the arm strength, being able to make all the throws, which he proved last year, the athleticism that really was on display in the NFL, which is impressive because when you get to the NFL level, you're going up against the superior athletes at every position. But most importantly, Bo Nix, he makes quick decisions with the football. And he doesn't take stacks. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. And that's going to work perfectly with how Sean Payton wants to run the offense. And so I'm very excited to see what he's going to be able to do. Now, keep in mind the Broncos, last year in a very tough division with Kansas City and the LA Chargers, won 10 games. I looked at their schedule. I think the Broncos will win at least 11 this year. So I would take the over on win total for the Broncos. And if they're healthy, their defense is arguably going to be the best in the NFL. And with their offensive line play, they should be able to run the football better. Sean Payton's going to have Bo Nix under center more to really bring the play action into effect. I think Bo Nix is poised to have a big year. And the work ethic, the attention to detail and the way he operates, it's perfect. It's exactly what you want. Now, I have a lot of guys I know in Denver who have been at camp every day. And it's not like Bo Nix is killing the Broncos defense at camp every day. That's not been the case. The Bronco defense they've won the majority of battles. But I think that's good for a young guy in Bo to go up against a great defense in practice because it's going to force him to get better. But he's poised to have a big year. And I'm excited to see how that plays out. Now, I still lean to Kansas City because they got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But in terms of talent on both sides of the ball, the Broncos roster is becoming one of the best in the NFL. So I think the AFC West, the best group of coaches in the history of the league in one division, as I mentioned before, Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Pete Carroll. I mean, that's not even debatable. And you're going to have 4 teams that are tough. You got to play 6 games in division against great coaches and good teams. The Raiders are going to be vastly improved because of coaching. And Pete's brought in a lot of veteran players that know how to run his system and do the things he wants to do. So I'm thrilled. But for Sean Payton to come out and say that about Bo Nix, I mean, this is pretty elite stuff from the coach. He's going to be one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league in the next 2 years. That's what we're seeing right now. He doesn't take sacks. He's got exceptional arm strength. He threw the longest ball, 67 air yards against Cincinnati. He can run. He can throw in funny body angles. Okay. So what you're saying is Bo's going to be pretty good. Gee, Sean. I'm excited. I don't want to get too excited, but I'm pumped.
Biggest NFL game he's played in, 1st and 10. Good time. McClinchy a block. Going deep. Oh, he's got him. He's got Mims. Touchdown.
All right. I still think the teams to beat right now in the AFC until proven otherwise, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. But they've got some strong contenders now, especially with the Chargers and the Broncos. All right, we'll come back and we're going to dive in. We'll eavesdrop in on the conversation I had. I want to emphasize a couple of points on the Ducks and college football. You can jump on board 503-248-0620. And I think we have some Hops tickets to give away. It's a Hops Ticket Tuesday. I'll give you a 4-pack coming up next. Your chance to sit in the Rip City Radio row here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Whoa, whoa. All right, we have a 4-pack of tickets for the Hillsborough Hops. And we're going to take on Everett on August 15th at Hillsborough Ballpark. So if you'd like to go check out some Hops baseball and sit in the Rip City Radio Row, you can call now, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. Call now, and you'll get a 4-pack of tickets for the Hops to sit in the Rip City Radio Row. Free baseball on a beautiful summer night, and you can check out the new ballpark that's being constructed that's almost done. Completion date, I think, is in December of this year. So call now, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. If you'd like to go see the Hops, August 15th against Everett. Fire away right now, 503-248-0620. I just got a text from Dr. Mike, and he sent me a link to the story that's out. And I think it was put together by Seth Wickersham, which is one of the stories I read before I talked about Bo today. And he said, by coincidence, I read this piece 20 minutes before your segment on the Broncos and Peyton and Nix. I knew what you were going to say. He's going to go play Red Tail tomorrow. Awesome. Dr. Mike, I miss you. I hope you're well, you and your lady, and enjoy going playing some golf tomorrow. I teed off this morning early. I woke up early, went to the course. The two normal guys, Glenn and Dan, that I play with, they were out today. So I teed off at 6:20. I got done by a couple of minutes past 9. I mean, it was a quick round. There was no one out there. I don't understand how that happens sometimes. When you get out there on the course, you look around, you're like, where is everybody? I played the first 9 holes with a nice young man named Cam, and he was there with his girlfriend. She was just riding in the cart. It seemed like they were on an early morning date. He was a younger guy. But they went in to the clubhouse at the turn to get some grub, and they said, oh, you can take off if you want. So I just went and played the final 9 by myself. It was awesome. Great weather, perfect morning. It was excellent. So I enjoyed that. So have fun tomorrow, Dr. Mike. But, yeah, I am pumped about the Broncos. I can't wait to see Bo Nix and how productive he's going to be this year. Now, a couple of different things I wanted to share with you in regard to Oregon and Oregon State. I spoke with Joe DeLeon, who is one of my favorite college football analysts on the program yesterday. And we talked about a variety of different things. And one of those I asked him about was Dante Moore, the Oregon quarterback who's taken over for Dylan Gabriel, who was at Oregon, went to UCLA, and now he's back. You know, what are the expectations? I asked Joe that question for Dante Moore in his first year as the QB1.
I have very high expectations for him, and I think it all comes from the fact that he decided to redshirt essentially this year and sit and to learn and to be around a true professional in Dylan Gabriel, who's been at multiple stops, his first year stepping in, and he takes off and is a Heisman Trophy finalist. He got to be a part of that from a distance and to just absorb those experiences to help him get better. He was a former 5-star for a reason because he's got an unbelievable arm, pretty good athlete. He can move, he can extend the pocket, but he can really threaten and stretch defenses in attack-type windows. I think where Dante Moore could be huge for this team is getting to work with Will Stein and to play perfectly within that system for the style of quarterback that they need. He is, and this is the craziest part about all this, he's the most gifted quarterback that they've had under Will Stein. Bo Nix is a great player, not as physically gifted as Dante Moore. Dylan Gabriel is super productive, not as physically gifted as Dante Moore. If Dante Moore's traits can live up to the hype, then this could really be a special season.
All right, that's Joe DeLeon on Dante Moore. I asked Phil Still the same question about Dante Moore and what he thought about the quarterback going into year number 1 as a starter.
You know, I think he's going to have, by far, a much better year than what he had at UCLA. UCLA was going through some growing pains. He was a freshman quarterback and didn't have a great supporting cast. Here at Oregon, he's got a very good supporting cast. In fact, I rate the offensive line number 10 in the country, the receiving core number 10, the running backs number 6. And I think with that kind of supporting cast and the fact he learned the system coming in here last year and developing behind Dylan Gabriel, I will see a much better Dante Moore than the one we saw at UCLA. UCLA. I don't think we're going to quite see Dylan Gabriel. He was a veteran quarterback, 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But I think Dante Moore's going to have a very good year in the Oregon offense.
All right. I also asked Joe, when he takes a look at the Ducks with all the changes, they've got to replace a number of starters on defense, a number of starters on offense, young receivers stepping in, offensive line reshuffling. What's your biggest concern? Here's what Joe DeLeon had to say.
Yeah, right now it's wide receiver. You lose Evan Stewart to the injury that he suffered during the offseason. And right now, DeCorey Moore is supposed to be that best guy up. Now, I'm buying the hype on DeCorey Moore. You heard a lot of great things about him during the spring. He could be one of the most special freshmen for Oregon this season. But at the same time, you're relying on a true freshman, and DeCorey Moore is going to be great, but he's not like Jeremiah Smith good. You're relying on a true freshman. That is going to be a really slippery slope. I think that DeCorey Moore is going to be able to have a really successful career, but the rest of the top options in that receiver room, they're average. They're not super threatening. I think that Will Stein's good enough of a coach that he's going to be able to tap into some of these players that are lesser known to the general public. But that receiver room is one that I think is the biggest question mark for this Oregon team out of any of the position groups.
All right, so Joe DeLeon thinks it's going to be the receiving group. I asked Phil Steele what the biggest challenge is going to be for Dan Lanning and the Ducks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be how quickly you can get these transfer players to assimilate into the team and into the system. And I think with the players he's brought in, you look at the offensive line, I generally have a lot of questions with the unit that has just one starter back. But I think bringing in a guy like Matthew Bedford from Indiana, Pregnon coming in from USC, Harkey from Texas State, who was an all-conference guy, another all-conference guy, and Isaiah World from Nevada. Those are 4 pretty talented guys coming in, added to the returning center that they had already. So I think that's going to be a quality offensive line. Let's see how quickly they assimilate together. But I think overall that's going to be the key, how quickly these transfers come in and play together as a team.
All right, and finally, Phil Steele talking about the Ducks' schedule. There's really only one game on the slate where they're going to be an underdog. That's early in the season at Penn State.
I've got the Ducks an underdog in one game at Penn State. And it is a tough situation for Oregon at that point because not only is Oregon playing a 5th straight week and traveling across the country, coming off a game against a rival Oregon State, but Penn State's off a bye. And I think Penn State's having a whiteout for that, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a lot of factors in Penn State's favor. But all the rest of the games, I think the next toughest game on the schedule would be playing Iowa in Kinnick. But I've got that one rated as a toss-up. So I think it's a pretty good schedule. 3rd toughest game is probably Washington because we know the Huskies are very tough at home.
All right, next up on Oregon State, I asked Joe DeLeon about Malik Murphy, the new quarterback that's coming in from Duke. Here's what he had to say.
He is a really fantastic runner, but for anyone who caught ACC play last year, saw what Duke did against Miami, and a lot of that was for how close they played him. A lot of that was because Malik Murphy was picking them apart as a passer. Very underrated passer. I was shocked that Murphy even left, and they ended up getting Darian Mensah, so that the transition made sense in the long run because they probably thought that they had a shot at getting Mensah, and Mensah's very gifted. But Malik Murphy ending up.
All right, there you go. So Malik Murphy he's going to be good. Props to the Beavs, their supporters, some of the boosters for putting together the resources necessary to make that happen. Phil Steele also shared his thoughts on the Oregon State Beavers and what he thinks about the team this year.
Oh, I tell you what, a much better year. And remember last year when I talked to Coach Bray, he was saying that the goal for the team was to make the playoff. And maybe we saw in the second half of the season, once that goal was out of reach, that, Oregon State struggled in the second half of the year. They also had some injury problems, of course, as well. But I think in the second year, and also one thing affecting them last year was the fact that so many players hit the portal. They only had 5 returning starters last year. Well, this year, it's year 2 for a head coach. And every head coach I talk to, hey, coach, coach, what's it like this year? It's night and day from last year, Phil. We know the players know the system, blah, blah. So it is that second year for Oregon State. They add in Malik Murphy, who gives them a passing threat, something they really lacked last year. I mean, the quarterbacks last season, 7 touchdown passes, 11 interceptions combined. You can't win with a 7-11 ratio. The offensive line loses some players, but Coach Bray told me it has a potential to be good. You look at the running back core with Hankerson, I like that, and the defense is solid. When I look at their schedule this year, a couple of key games, home against Houston, at App State. Those are a couple of toss-up games in my mind, but the only games I've got them a clear underdog are at Texas Tech and at Oregon. This is a team that could come close to doubling last year's win total. I'm much more bullish on Oregon State. I love the home field advantage. We saw them actually lose 3 home games last year. I think that'll go away this year. They're going to win the majority of their home games, if not all of them. I think it's going to be a much better year for the Beavers as they transition into a real conference next year.
All right, there you go. One other thing from Phil Steele on Oregon State. I just asked him about the roster. Last year, depth was an issue. And when the injuries mounted up, especially on defense, they struggled. But here's Phil's assessment on where they're at now, year 2 with Trent Bray.
Yeah, he brought in a lot of transfers, and generally I don't like it when teams have a lot of transfers, but as you mentioned, they needed to add the depth, and some of these transfers coming in are third string. So if you've got third string guys that they're expected to play, you're in pretty good shape. Much better depth than last year, and as mentioned, last year's team was one of the least experienced in the country. I had them number 127 on my experience chart. This year they're number 30 on the experience chart. That's a 97-spot leap, and a couple days from now I'm going to do a blog on philsteele.com, which talks about how teams that are vastly more experienced than the year before have a much better year. Oregon State's going to be one of the poster children for that blog.
All right, so they're in a much better spot. I would say my adopted team, the Arizona State Sun Devils, I pay close attention to them. Kenny Dillingham, who was at Oregon, a big fan of his. Sam Levitt, who played his high school ball at West Lynn, is now the quarterback and had a tremendous first year with the Devils after transferring over from Michigan State. He's got a chance to have a big, big year and potentially put himself in Heisman conversation. But the other guy is Jordan Tyson, their wide receiver. De Leon's got him as his top wideout for the 26th draft. And he was big time last year until he busted his collarbone in that Territorial Cup game against Arizona. Here's what Joe had to say about Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson.
Well, I would even maybe go as far as to say that they are the best wide receiver quarterback tandem in the country, because Tyson, at least for me right now, and I think for a lot of people, he's my number 1 receiver in the 2026 draft.
Wow.
After I did my receiver rankings this past week, and he's so fast, he's so fluid, he is dynamic with the ball in his hands after the catch. And Levitt, who I don't know if he's going to be a part of this 2026 class, but he showed a lot of signs, a lot of exciting signs of what he can be not only in college football, but at the pro level. He is really explosive athletically. He's very accurate, kind of like point guard style play where he throws on the run and he's able just to dish the ball to his guys to set them up to succeed. I think it's really easy to assume that Cam Scadaboo is gone and they're not going to do well. I think that Sam Levitt deserves a lot more credit for how good they were and some of the big things that he did in some of their most important games last season. I think with that duo, it's going to carry them very far. And the rest of the roster is pretty strong, and they're bringing back a lot of those guys. They didn't have a ton of roster turnover, so there's really strong reasoning to believe that they're going to win the Big 12.
All right, there you go. And there's Joe DeLeon and Phil Steele on both Oregon and Oregon State. A reminder, Christine Brennan, columnist for USA Today, longtime sports commentator. What was that? She's covered every Olympics, both summer and winter, since '84. And she's got her new book out on Caitlin Clark, which is a terrific read. She's going to be out at the Barnes & Noble in Clackamas Friday at 6. And then Saturday, she's going to be at the Sports Bra before Chicago and Indiana. She's going to be there around 3:30 to 4. But if you wanted to get a copy of the book or have her sign a book, maybe to your daughter, she's going to be available at both spots. Barnes & Noble Friday at 6 at Clackamas Town Center. And then at the Sports Bra on Saturday from 3:30 to 4. But I enjoyed having a chance to talk with her. If you're into Caitlin Clark and some of the stories surrounding the WNBA, you can podcast that interview. Just go to our free iHeartRadio app, and you can podcast the show. I talked to her yesterday, but she has been covering sports for a long time, and really kind of a blazer in her early days. First sports columnist at the Miami Herald. I think that was back in '81, and the first female on the Redskins beat back in '85 at the Washington Post. That's a pretty big deal. I should ask her about Jack Stanley and the Scab players from '87. That was pretty cool to have him in studio yesterday. I took a picture of the championship ring, the Super Bowl ring from Super Bowl 22. It was a horrific memory in my life, but obviously a great story for Jack. And then the Redskins, because they're cool, they shared the playoff profits with the Scab players. So Jack, who was just finishing up his college time, he ends up getting a few checks in the mail for the playoff shares. He ended up getting like $82,000 from the Skins, all because of the games he played in during the strike. And that was the money that he used to put down on Cactus Jacks, the business that he ran for 30 years. That's a pretty wild story. Fresh out of college, and all of a sudden you got checks coming in the mail because of your work as a replacement player in the NFL during the strike. And the Redskins won all 3 games, and Joe Gibbs did not allow any of the players to cross the picket line. Even the Broncos had, I know of one, Steve Watson, who crossed the picket line. But how about that story where he said that the veteran players were taunting the Scab players at practice, throwing eggs, yelling stuff at them, and Joe Gibbs got up on a ladder with one of those loudspeakers and basically shut that down. He's like, look, I support what you're doing right now in your battle against the owners, but you're not going to disrupt my practices. And Joe Gibbs is one of those old school guys who he wouldn't cuss. He's not going to demean you, but he had no problem explaining what he needed to do because he was a man in charge. So I enjoyed that. It's pretty cool, man. Even though you only played in 3 games, you still get a Super Bowl ring. And they brought him back all because of that 30 for 30. If you haven't seen the 30 for 30 on the 87 strike and the Scab players, it's awesome. Like pretty much every other 30 for 30. That's one of those go-tos, like if I'm, looking for something to watch. It's amazing how you ever found yourself in this situation where we have access to more channels and more content than we have in the history of our lives. And yet I find myself flipping from channel to channel. There's nothing to watch. That's usually when I just go to YouTube. All right, 503-248-0620. I appreciate your time. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday. We'll keep things rolling here. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Now, Shacker, I believe this is Primus. Is that correct? Yeah, Shacker hitting a little Primus. Not my normal cup of tea, but I recognize Primus when I hear it. All right, my man Sean has chimed in. He says, Joe Gibbs and Bill Walsh are my two favorites. Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and I think that's not easy. Bill Walsh came from the Paul Brown coaching tree and was very innovative with the West Coast offense. We used to say, be ready when you play the 49ers because they score first and score often. Yeah, there's no doubt. Bill Walsh was a genius, and that was his nickname for good reason. But his coaching tree, even Jack Stanley mentioned it yesterday because he was with the 49ers in camp during preseason in that 87 season before the strike took place. We're talking like Mike Holmgren, Denny Green, Ray Rhodes. They were all there. But you should, if you ever want to have fun, if you got nothing better to do with your time, you should look up coaching trees like I do sometimes. And I just like to see where certain guys come from. But the Bill Walsh coaching tree might be the best of all time. Bill Parcells is also very good. Let's see if I can find maybe a good look at the coaching tree. But, yeah, it's been great. Bill Walsh is awesome. And Joe Gibbs, terrific. So who were the 3 quarterbacks that he won Super Bowls with? Doug Williams, Mark Rippon. That 91 team that destroyed the Bills in the Super Bowl, that's one of the best teams I've seen. That was a terrific team. They had Rippon, who had a big year. Ernest Biner was their running back, the guy that came over from Cleveland who authored the fumble in the 88 AFC Championship game against Denver. They had the posse, which was, I believe, Ricky Sanders, Gary Clark, and Art Monk, and their defense was terrific. Who was the other one? Thiesman? I think it was. Thiesman, Doug Williams, and Mark Rippon. Let me double-check that real quick. 3 QBs to win a Super Bowl with Joe Gibbs. Let's see what Rabbi Google has to say. Yeah, Thiesman. Yep, Thiesman, Williams, Rippon. Those are your 3 right there. Boom, boom, boom. It's pretty awesome. Oh, that's why he had the 2 Super Bowls on it. His ring, I'd forgotten about that because it came before the Rippon Super Bowl, but it had 2, or the number 2, because that was their second ring. That's pretty cool. All right, Bill Walsh coaching tree. Let's take a look at that. That's not what I was looking for. Where's the coaching tree? Gosh dang it. I hate it when I can't find it. Some of these websites have like, oh, here it is, the actual tree. So Bill Walsh, who was with the 49ers from 79 to 88. Sam Weish, who coached with the Bengals from 84 to 91, went to a Super Bowl. And then with Tampa from 92 to 95. Bruce Coslett, who was part of the Weish tree. He was the Jets coach from 90 to 93 and the Bengals coach from 96 to 2000. George Seifert, who, of course, won a Super Bowl, 2 of them with the 49ers, and then coached the Carolina Panthers from 99 to 01. Dennis Green. And then from Dennis Green came Brian Billick, who won a Super Bowl with Baltimore. Mike Smith, Mike Tice, and Scott Linehan. Mike Holmgren came from the Walsh tree, and from Holmgren came Mariucci, Marty Morningwig, John Gruden, Bill Callahan, Mike Tomlin, Raheem Morris, Gus Bradley, Brad Childress, Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Steve Spagnuolo, Pat Shurmur, Ron Rivera, and Leslie Frazier. That all of those guys span from Gruden, who came from Holmgren, and Holmgren came from Walsh. And then Ray Rhodes. And from Ray Rhodes, Jim Zorn, Mike Sherman, who produced Joe Philbin. But think about that. So the primary guys from Walsh's tree, Sam Weiss, George Seifert, Dennis Green, Mike Holmgren, and Ray Rhodes. And look at all the other coaches that were born from that original tree that spanned out. We're talking about all-timers. Sam Weiss was terrific. Bruce Coslet, a great offensive mind. Dennis Green, Brian Billick. That's amazing. Steve Mariucci, John Gruden, Andy Reid, and then from the Reid staff, Childress, Harbaugh, Spagnuolo, Shermer, Rivera, and Leslie Frazier. Joe Philbin. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, so it's fun. And the Bill Walsh coaching tree, I think, is the best. Bill Parcells, not bad. And I'll argue it to the day I die that Bill Parcells, best coach I've ever seen in my lifetime. I know everyone points to Belichick, but for me, Parcells, he's the one that discovered Belichick and developed him. And then Parcells won Super Bowls with Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler. And I listened to it in a podcast with Jeff Hostetler on the way out to the beach with Kaylee on Friday. I'm sure she enjoyed that topic. Jeff Hostetler's a cool dude out of West Virginia. Let's see if I can find the Parcells coaching tree. Let's see here. I can't find it. Whatever. Oh, here we go. Tom Coughlin, Romeo Crennel, Al Groh, Todd Haley, Ray Hanley, Eric Mangini, Chris Palmer, Sean Payton, Tony Sperano, Mike Zimmer, Anthony Lynn, Todd Bowles, and Freddie Kitchens, all part of the Parcells coaching tree. That's not bad. That's pretty cool. It says here, before he was a head coach, Parcells served as an assistant for Ron Earhart and Ray Perkins. 2 of these years were spent on Perkins' coaching staff during this time as head coach. 14 assistant coaches, Belichick, Crennel, Hanley, Coughlin, Groh, Palmer, Haley, Eric Mangini, Sean Payton, Tony Sperano, Mike Zimmer, Anthony Lynn, Todd Bowles, and Freddie Kitchens on his coaching staff were hired as head coaches